Welcome to the L&D Go Beyond Podcast. This is the show that brings you real, actionable workplace learning insights from some of the brightest minds in the L&D space. This season, we're diving into the realm of learning impact. Join experts as they share their knowledge and experiences, helping us push the boundaries of what's possible when it comes to delivering impactful learning. Get ready to go beyond. Enjoy the conversation.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for the second episode of Season 2 of the L&D Go Beyond podcast. My guest today is Dr. Ina Weinbauer-Heidel. Welcome, Dr. Ina.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. Let me take a moment to introduce you to our audience. Dr. Ina Weinbauer-Heidel is the founder and CEO of the Institute of Transfer Effectiveness. She has been dedicating her career to understanding and improving the interface between transfer research and transfer practice. She sums up more than 120 years of transfer research and shows that transfer success is manageable with what she calls as the 12 levers of transfer effectiveness. We'll talk a lot about that today. So, Dr. Ina, welcome again. I'm so excited to learn more about your work on transfer effectiveness and how, more importantly, it links with learning impact. I think we're all after that. But before we get started with transfer effectiveness, can you share a little about your own journey and how did the Institute of Transfer Effectiveness happen? Tell us a little about what you have been doing. How did you get here?
Yeah, of course. So several years ago, I worked at a well-known Austrian business school, and there I was responsible for designing customized MBA programs, so leadership development programs. And yeah, I was having fun there. I was successful. My boss was happy, and so was I. But as time passed, there were some questions coming to my mind again and again. Those programs were quite expensive and they were always full. But I had this question of meaning. So I asked myself, do we really create an impact? Do people really change behavior after their MBA programs? And I couldn't get rid of this question anymore. And I started to do some research, and I came across these evaluation results of Robert Brinkerhoff and Kirkpatrick and other huge and big and successful transfer researchers. And it turned out that, my gut feeling was unfortunately quite true, that a lot of people don't transfer what they learn in their training programs. So normally we're talking about 80% who come back from a training program and do everything like they have done before, sooner or later. And so L&D world has a huge transfer problem. And I wanted to do my PhD anyway. So I decided that I focus on this topic. I was trying to kind of find the holy grail of transfer. So what does it take to really make transfer work? Unfortunately, I couldn't find the holy grail because there were many transfer researchers who have been dealing with this question of how do we make our training effective for a very long time. But it turned out that, and that's a quite paradox thing, that transfer research has a transfer problem itself. So researchers claim that practitioners are not making use of their findings, although they have been dealing with the question for more than 120 years. And this was my research gap. So bringing this whole bunch of transfer research together and kind of finding out what practitioners can do or how they can use it to really improve their training. And this is when we developed the 12 levers of transfer effectiveness. At the beginning, it was just kind of a side part of my PhD thesis, but then more and more companies got interested. Okay, what did you find out? Is there a solution to the transfer problem? And that's when we started the Institute for Transfer Effectiveness to make it usable for a broad audience. And this is our vision, to really make it easy for L&D practitioners to use this whole bunch of transfer research.
Brilliant. Brilliant. You saw a transfer problem. You went in to find the Holy Grail. You discovered that the transfer research has a transfer problem itself. And then you kind of invented the Holy Grail, have you? The 12 levers?
So far, I would not say it's a Holy Grail, but it's a huge help for practitioners who want to really make transfer happen. And this is what I can definitely also say as a researcher.
Excellent.
Yes.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for sharing. What do you think about learning impact, and how does transfer really gel with that? How does it impact it?
Yeah. I think the question of what is learning impact and what is transfer is one of the most crucial questions in general, because somehow we think that learning or learning impact has something to do with the knowledge of my brain goes into the knowledge of my learner's brain, and when it is there, then everything is fine. But this is not what we are calling transfer, and moreover, this is not what companies really aim for. They don't want people with a huge head. They want people who can use this knowledge, who can bring it into practice, work with it, use it to reach the business goals. So it's not about knowledge, it's much more about knowledge in action, about really changing behavior after a training. And this is what we call training transfer. I think Kirkpatrick, most people know, bring it to the point really, really well. So on a very basic level, we can evaluate, for example, training in terms of reaction. And this is how most companies do it. They ask people after the training program, did you like the program? Are you satisfied? So this is the reaction level 1 in Kirkpatrick's model. Level 2 is knowledge. So do people know more after the training program? This is the thing in our head, but this is not where we want to end. The third level then is behavior. Do people really change behavior after the training program? This is where we talk about transfer. So this is what we want to reach. And Kirkpatrick, of course, has a fourth level as well, which is about results. So do these changed behaviors of our employees really change results or help us to reach business goals, which of course we are all aiming for. And if I'm talking about learning impact or transfer, I'm really talking about behavior that contributes to reaching companies' goals. So this is what we are aiming for.
I had a related thought around this, and we are observing a lot of companies who have challenges at level 1 and 2, and their desire is level 4, but there's a big gap.
Yes.
So of course it's a journey, right? And so they need to really think of what could be the impact that their programs can make to move from where they are, even if it is a small movement, rather than only thinking 4 is the only level of impact or 3 is the only level of impact. So is that something that you have seen it helps if organizations want to move, small steps at a time?
The good news is that those levels are they are not in terms of that they add on each other. So if you have positive reaction, that does not mean that you have a lot of results. Or if people have learned a lot in terms of having knowledge in their mind and in their brain, that does not mean that they really change behavior a lot. So you don't have to climb all the other levels before. You can directly aim to level 3, level behavior. Of course, it's nice if people react good to a training program. And of course, it's important to also get some knowledge. But you can immediately, and that's maybe the most important step in making transfer happen, you can immediately ask yourself the question, which kind of behavior do I want to see after this training program? don't just ask the questions, what do I want people to know after the training? Because that won't change anything. But which kind of behavior do you want to see as a result of the training program? How do our employees need to behave so that it contributes to the company's goals? And this is one of the most important steps, and it's not a huge step.
A part of the question that I had was also this, that some organizations may have a challenge even at getting completions, right? And it could be a combination of a lot of things. It could be a combination of how does the environment support it, what has been their past experiences, and hence impacting motivation, and many more things. But on the face of it, it might look that they are aiming for level 1 impact, though it is actually a result of a lot of other things that are not probably happening right. So, from that perspective, maybe for them to start making progress, they have to look at some of these other factors and achieve, some sort of completions first, and then only aim for something else.
So in order to get level 3 impact, so really transfer, what we do need is to focus on 3 areas. This is what we learned from research. We need to focus on training design. This is where we are usually quite good at. So we know how to design training. Most of us know how important it is that we do a lot of active learning, active practice. So really doing what we should do afterwards, and not just showing PowerPoint slides for 6 hours in a row. That's the first area. The second area are our participants. We have 3 levers there, which are, for example, how motivated are they? Do they want to change their behavior, or is it not their personal aim? These kind of things. Some experienced trainers or designers are already looking on this area as well. But then there is the third area, which is so important, and it's so often overlooked. And this is the area of the organization, not organizing the training, but the company. So what is for example, what are the supervisors doing? So when someone returns from a training program, do the supervisor ask, okay, what have you learned there? What are your new ideas? How can we implement that in our daily business? Or do the participants hear, okay, where have you been the last 2 days? And oh my God, you have completely crazy ideas. No, we can't do it here at all. That doesn't work at all. So then, of course, we have a huge barrier. And this is just one of the 5 levers in the organizational field. Another lever, for example, is support from peers. So what do our colleagues say? Do they appreciate what we learn in training? Do they support me in changing my behavior? And these are 2 of the organizational levers, and this organizational part is so often overlooked. And we don't have to do a lot here. It's not about, it's quite often not about adding additional transfer tools. It's much more about breaking down barriers. So talking with the supervisors beforehand and saying, okay, your employee will soon be joining a training program. These are the goals. Is this something that you support, or do you want your employee to go there? Because if the supervisor said, no, this has nothing to do with me, and I don't support that at all, then we don't need to send our employees into the training program. That doesn't make sense. And these organizational levers are really important if you design training. And we always have to keep in mind that designing training doesn't mean that we send our employees somewhere in a quiet room and they come back in a repaired way and are able to work completely differently. But we need to align it with the organization. Without the organizational support, we won't get any transfer. So it depends a little on the culture. It depends a little on the target group of the training. But what we see quite often is that, for example, support from supervisors is a really huge lever, which we have to address. Or another lever that's normally quite huge as well is transfer expectation in the organization. So does the organization really expect that people change something, or do they say, yeah, go to training because then we have done something and that's perfectly fine, but please don't change anything. That's another really, really huge thing there.
I mean, if we were to really influence the managers and supervisors positively about what their role is, what should they be doing after a training is over, etc., that can really improve the transfer effectiveness of programs.
Exactly. And there is there the transfer tools come in, because now the question is, okay, we need the supervisors on board. We need them to support their employees. So the question is, how do we get them on board? And that's quite often the most pressing or the more difficult question. And there you can use transfer tools, which can be really, really huge. So we have designed training programs in virtual worlds where the supervisor come in as an avatar and says, okay, welcome to the training program. This is why I want you to go to this program. This is what I expect afterwards. Here are some projects that you can work on during the program, and afterwards we'll talk about. So that's a huge thing, where employees then feel, wow, I'm really supported. This guy is here as avatar in my training program. Amazing. But you can do it really, really, really small as well. So one really little tool is that you ask your employees, your trainees, before the training program start, please have a 15-minute conversation with your supervisor about what are the goals of this program, what are situations where you can apply what you have newly learned, and how can your supervisor maybe support you in applying? What do you need from him or her? And after you return from the training program, have another 15-minute of conversation where you talk about what you have discussed before. And we see that this 15-minute conversation already have a significant impact on transfer effectiveness. So really, really small intervention, but already a quite huge impact. Or you can make your trainees write a little postcard from the training room to the company and say, wow, dear boss, this is what I learned in the training program. I want to talk with you about this and this and that. And then you send it directly from the seminar room. And your supervisor will be quite surprised to get a postcard from the training room, and will be maybe quite open to having a discussion with you. But which kind of transfer tools fit in which area, in which culture, and so on, this is something where we have to be very careful. But normally L&D people know very well which kind of transfer tools work in their special environments.
Excellent. I like some of those ideas. The postcard is a great one, and of course we will have to adapt it to digital environment if companies are doing more digital training now. Even for when you said, should this person be going on training, if a manager has to approve it, maybe for digital training it is not so much required these days. In most organizations you have open programs available and people might be doing things themselves. So yeah, we will have to kind of use it as it works in a particular organization. Absolutely.
Definitely. But even when you're in digital training, for example, maybe even a training outside of your company, and maybe your boss doesn't even know that you're in training, then you can I've worked with several of those providers. And for example, they can have one PowerPoint slide for their participants, which they can give them and tell them, okay, this is the one slide that you can show your supervisor to bring him or her on board. So really, these very, very easy small tools. It's all about making your supervisor curious about what you learned in training, and make him or her supporting what you learned there.
Does it become some sort of a too much work or too difficult to make this happen in organizations where you may have had experimented trying out these things? And who really owns it? Because with some of these ideas that we just saw, let's say we include a tool in a program, it becomes the learner's responsibility kind of to have that conversation. Or if there is a manager who's got large team, they may face a challenge of having those 15-minute chats. So I'm just trying to explore, what could be the challenges in implementing this part. In my view, this probably is, I don't know, I'm sure you will have a better idea of which one, but this seems to be the most important one in your environment category, supervisor or manager.
It depends. So there are companies where the supervisor is kind of the most important person when it comes to managing behavior, because he or she is leading very tight and giving very narrow ways of how to behave in the organization. Then, of course, he or she is the most important person when it comes to changing behavior, because he or she has to approve it. In other companies, so especially in expert companies or also in cultures with a very, very low hierarchy, the supervisor isn't important at all, because the only one who is kind of managing your behavior is yourself and quite often social pressure, so the peers. Then the peers are becoming much more important than the supervisor. So it really depends here. But what we have to ask what we have to ask here is, okay, who is responsible for or who is influencing the actual behavior, and who has to kind of approve or manage or support if a behavior change takes place. And if we then ask ourselves, okay, maybe that's too much work for supervisors or for peers, or we have so many trainings, I'm not that sure if we can do it for any training, then my quite provocative question is, but maybe then we are just doing too much training. Maybe then we are just trying to change behavior every month. And that's just too much for the organization. So if we send people to training, let's say once a week, and they always come back and apply what they have learned, change their behavior, do things in a different way, then it's maybe just too much. So if we cannot bring managers on board because they keep telling us, well, I can't support my employee here, that's not doable at all, then my question is, okay, do you supervisor really want your employee to change behavior, or is it just because you want to say that you offer a lot of training programs for your employees, which is perfectly fine as well. But then we have to be very open here that we have some training for wellness reasons or for employer branding or something like that. And we have some trainings where we really want to see behavior change. And we should not mix them up.
Or when you said, they're doing too much training, I'm just linking it back to what we started with, which is transfer of knowledge. They may be just doing a lot of knowledge transfer without bothering about whether it is making any impact, whether there is any change, whether any transfer that is happening. So if they're doing that, in any case, they are wasting a lot of money and time. So they may want to focus on what are my top priorities and ensure that you get the outcomes that you want from that.
Exactly. And I think that's even also important for every employee, for every person, because just imagine you have been to, 300 training programs as a leader, for example, and every time you experience yourself, you've been to training, then you try something new a little bit, let's say 2 or 3 days, and afterwards you find yourself back to the old behavior. That really is very destructive for your self-efficacy. So this feeling of, am I someone who is really sticking to new behavior, who is kind of going through these things? And if you don't find yourself in that position, if you always watch yourself falling back to old behavior, I can't do it again, I didn't manage it and stuff like that, that's really depressing for this person. And that can really, really harm every one of us. And moreover, that's also kind of a question I get asked quite often. So what is a really, really, really little transfer tool that we can use in every company and in every case and always works? And maybe I can share that here as well. It is a tool which has nothing to do with the organizational levers, because quite often I hear, I can't do anything about the organizational levers because we don't have contact here and stuff like that. I don't fully believe it, but still, okay, perfectly fine for me. But if you want to start very, very small, then as a trainer, what you can do, or also in digital training, doesn't matter, is that you end every training program with a proper transfer planning. Means You ask your participants, what is your personal next baby step? What are you going to do differently directly on, let's say, Monday at 5 p.m.? But if you plan your behavior in so-called mini plans or implementation plans, if-then plans, we see that the probability that you really do it increases by is 60% higher or even more as if you don't plan it. So if you're a trainer and do training in a virtual setting or in a face-to-face setting, then take the end of the training programs to really work out with your employees what they are going to do next. Very small step and 60% more transfer impact. I think that's worth it.
And I'm recently reading Julie Dirkson's book now, the second book, which is about behavior change, and she references to this again. So essentially what we're looking at is breaking down the desired behavior into the smallest unit and ensuring that before they leave the program, they kind of write it. This is when I will do it. This is what I will do, etc. And borrowing from those, that can improve transfer effectiveness greatly.
Exactly. That's exactly the thing. And we can learn so much from behavioral sciences here. There is a really good exchange now between transfer researchers and behavioral scientists, because of course, every training is behavior change. And this is the reason why we can really work together very, very well.
Excellent. Excellent. Is this what you would also call as implementation intention, or would that be a slightly larger plan?
No, that's perfectly fine. It basically is an implementation intention. So the best way is to, if then or after I will, so really stacking it to existing habits. This is what BG Fogg was doing research on. So this is a wonderful way to make sure that you really implement this habit. And if you then moreover have the organizational support, so imagine that you have your mini plan, your implementation intention, you come back to the company and there is one of your favorite colleagues, which let's call him is your change observer, which is another transfer tool that you can use. So finding a colleague, a really nice colleague, and asking him or her, do you want to be my change behavior after the training program? And your change observer waits for you and says, okay, great, you're back from training. Show me your implementation intention. What are you planning to do? And then you show it to him. And of course, you then have this kind of nice social pressure, this support from peers, because of course you then are more willing to really implement it. You don't want to lose faith in front of him or her. So that's another little tool that you can really implement in the training design already.
So another thing, and I don't know if it is one of the levers or another tool that you may have, which you have not yet shared, but how do we incorporate practice after the training? Because people will actually forget a lot of what they have learned in the training, even if it is well designed and they had an opportunity to practice within the training environment. I think there is a lot of value for them to practice in a more real life environment, maybe with some help, scaffolding, guidance, coaching, observation, whatever. But how does that come into your transfer practice, or which lever does it really support?
Yeah. So I would say that addresses, for example, the lever transfer volition, which could be kind of translated as willpower. So really staying to what you have planned after the training. So this is one lever that you could bring in mind here. And it's quite interesting that we have this idea that kind of training ends at the seminar room door, or at the virtual door, doesn't matter. Or if you close the self-learning program, when you close it, then it's kind of over, and yes, you are kind of ready. But we have to get rid of this idea, because every one of us knows that learning doesn't take place in the seminar room itself. It's much more about what happens afterwards, and even the problems with this new behavior turn out afterwards when you try it in this real life world. And it's one of these, I don't know, very strange but long-lasting routines that we have established in our L&D world. That training quite often takes 2 days, or is, I don't know, half a day of a online training 2 times. But we have never thought about really designing learning as a process where you have more than one touch point. And of course, it's absolutely necessary that you have a training program, then you have an implementation phase where you try out new things, maybe supported by a professional transfer coach or a collegial transfer coach or a change observer, something like that. And then you meet again, but not only those who want to meet again because it's just nice, but really, really an integral part of the training program. And then you meet again and discuss about what has worked well, what were the challenges, how can we overcome the challenges. So this should be an integral part of every training program, that you have a kind of follow-up. And I would not call it follow-up, because it's not the not so important thing that happens afterwards. It's module 2. It's I don't know, really something is extremely important.
For me, then, what I'm looking at is implementation intention / transfer planning is one quick thing that almost anybody can implement tomorrow. Anything else, any other tool that you think would be useful for L&D teams to get the stakeholder buy-in? Because they are essentially, like we said, there is a lobby, there is set patterns and systems that have been in place for hundreds of years, if not more. So how do they break it? So is there something that they can take away and say, okay, this is how maybe we can influence our higher ups and the management team to make some changes?
Yeah. So the funny thing is that for most people, it's completely clear that a lot of those routines are quite strange. So I think one really important step is that there is someone in the company who just brings this topic to the table and says, okay, let's talk about transfer. Isn't it strange that we just have training and afterwards nothing happened? Should we try something different here? Or isn't it strange that we don't evaluate if people change behavior, but just ask if they liked it? Should we maybe try something different here? Or isn't it strange that we hand out certificates for the training programs when people were sitting in the training room? They haven't applied anything. They leave the training room and then they get the certificate, which is kind of completely strange. So why don't try to get the certificate for implementing something new? For example, if you're in a presentation training, why don't earn the certificate for having a presentation in front of the audience where you had in mind those 3 new behaviors that you wanted to address, and therefore get your certificate? That's such a little thing, but it makes a completely difference, because it shows everyone in the company, okay, in this training, in our company, it's not about learning, it's really about applying what you have learned, and therefore you get certified. And there are many more of these funny routines and myths that we can just bring to the table and talk about it. And what I learned is that companies, so if L&D people want to bring others on board, a good idea is to start with very, very, very small steps. So if you talk to the board, for example, and want to bring in this transfer topic, this transfer issue, then say, okay, we have done a lot of training and a lot of the stuff we do is really, really well. But what I want to talk about today is bringing more impact to our training world. And there are some routines, some habits, which I would love to experiment with. And then you take some of those and just bring in some very little steps. For example, why not try this supervisor conversation? 15 minutes. And let's see where it takes us. Why not try to hand out a certificate for a little case or for a little project or for something what we have applied? Or why not, if you do a cold call training where you call potential customers, why shouldn't we do that in the training directly? No one will do it afterwards if you haven't tried it in this stressful situation with real people. Let's experiment with it and then we evaluate. and see if it has brought any difference here. And normally then you get a lot of stakeholders who say, okay, these are very small steps. Let this guy or this lady from the L&D department try. It sounds really nice. So yeah, let's give it a try. And that's normally the way that works best.
Excellent. I mean, that's actually encouraging. If stakeholders say this is a small step, go ahead and try. That's very encouraging. Yeah. Excellent.
Exactly.
Excellent.
And moreover, another thing which, so if we're talking about the stakeholder buy-in, another way that works really, really well. So if you already have a kind of established role in your company, then you should wait for what we call CEO babies. Which is a training program that is very important for the C-level, something where they say, okay, a lot of money in there, a lot of expectations, because we really need to do something here. This is also a good point where you can jump in and talk about the 12 levers and try several new transfer tools. Because for those programs, you normally get more budget and more, it's much more okay if you try those transfer tools there. So either try it with very, very little steps in a broad way. This is what we call the broad approach, or the CEO level baby approach, the deep approach, how we call it. So one program where you optimize all the 12 levers. And the great thing, this is so fantastic. What we see is that the role of L&D people really changes when they start to talk about transfer. Quite often, L&D people are people who organize training, which is nice, wonderful, perfect. But for example, if the company has any money issues, quite often this is the first one of the first things that kind of has to leave the company, or less training or stuff like that. But if you talk about transfer, you position yourself as a strategic business partner, as the partner who is responsible or helping the C-level in designing new behavior. And this is a really, really, really important role, which is especially important in times of struggles. And this is maybe one of the parts that I like most about this whole transfer thing, that a lot of L&D people keep telling me, okay, since I talk about transfer and design transfer, my role in our organization has completely changed. And that's wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure if they're able to support the organization with more and better transfer, that is going to lead to outcomes, and their role is going to eventually get transformed into someone who's a partner. All right. So, I think we touched on quite a few things. Amongst the environment, is there anything else which is important to highlight? I'm sure all 12 are equally important, but I'm just focusing, and probably it is more because our work has been largely with corporate clients who have been doing a lot of training. They understand focusing on learners. They understand focusing on training design. Not that, all of them are doing it brilliantly well, but looks like it's the third element, which I think most of your 12 levers also lie, is where very few organizations focus. So is there anything else which is worth highlighting from that section?
Wow. Yeah, that's kind of difficult because it always depends on the training program. I really often get the question, which lever is the most important lever? And I wish I had an answer there. But unfortunately, the only, and this is not satisfying at all, but it's the only right answer, that it depends on the training program. What I really suggest here is that you go through the 12 levers very, very quickly. So ask yourself, do the supervisors support the new behavior? Do the peers support the new behavior? Are participants motivated to show this new behavior, and so on? So there are kind of self-audit questions to all 12 levers. And then what we see is that L&D people immediately find the weak spots. And these are the levers which you should then address with a little transfer tool, where you should implement something to get a little bit more upgrade on this lever. And this is something I can really recommend. If you design a training program, go through the 12 levers. Just ask yourself very, very quick these 12 questions. It's a task of between 5 and 10 minutes. It doesn't take longer. But then you find your weak spots and then put a little transfer tool in directly there, and you will see the transfer magic happens.
Excellent. And there is a book on this that you have written. Is there any other book that you would recommend?
When it comes to transfer tools, then you will find a lot of stuff in my book. There are tons of awesome books out there. I would recommend to read a lot about from this behavioral science part, because we can learn a lot here. I can recommend everything from Kirkpatrick, from Brinkerhoff, from Will Thalheimer. So there is a lot of stuff, and I love to read. So that's kind of hard. But I guess if you are looking for a very easy and understandable and practically orientated form of managing transfer, then I think you're quite well with my book. I have written the second book. This is my PhD thesis, and I would not recommend it to anyone to read it, because it's really boring and it's not practical at all. So if you want to read something, then buy the book, What Makes Training Really Work, or come to our Transfer Designer Certification Program, because we also have an online transfer toolbox where there are a lot of transfer tools in there from all over the world, which practitioners have kind of collected. They have tested it in their everyday practice. And we started to collect it all. And this is what you get in our Transfer Designer Certification Program. If you want to go deeper here.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Dr. Ina, thank you so much for your time today and sharing insights around transfer. It's such an important topic for everybody in L&D. I really appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.